something that you might want to do in your CakePHP applications is maintain a count of related information on a table. So for example, I've got an articles table here, and when we look at the actual article, we find it's got a number of related tags. So you might want to say, okay, let's put a tag count in this articles table so that it's easy to query and we don't have to do a join to get that information. Another thing you might want to do, say for example, in this application, a user does two things. They create articles and they publish articles. So in the user table, you might want to have a article count and a published article count. So let's have a look at doing that. I'm going to use a database utility called dbeaver. So the first thing, let's just have a look at that actual database that we're looking at, and close that. Remove the Finks log table because it's distracting. And so we've got a many-to-many relationship here between articles and tags, and then we've got a one-to-many relationship between users and articles. And in our documentation under CounterCache here, we see that we've got the ability to not only do a CounterCache on a one-to-many, so basic usage, but also a belongs to many, which is that many-to-many relationship. Now, the first thing that we need to do in our database is to add fields. So in our article table, we want to add a field to hold the tag count, and in our users table, we want to add a field to have hold article count and also to hold the number of articles we've published. Now our articles table also needs a published field as well in order to have that boolean. So going to our code here, let's get started. Alright, so firstly let's create a bin cake migrations, create, add counter. Well, we might just add a published field first. Let's do that. So let's go bake migration, add published to articles, and it's published, and it was going to be a Boolean field. So let's have a look at that, adding that to the database. Has it done it correctly? Now currently it's saying if we try to run it, let's try and run that. Cake bin migrations migrate, and it blows up, and it's blowing up because it's saying that you're not allowed to do a null. So we could say, to get it to work, we just say false, and that will now create the table. Let's roll this back, because not only do we want to add the field, we also want to populate it. So if table has column published, let's run a query to update the publish field to randomly assign it to different statuses of either whether it's published or not. So update published, and let's create now here. We can use CakePHP methods if we want. So I'm just going to pull in the locator aware trait so that we can make a reference to our articles table. So with fetch table, we're using a table alias, so it's articles is the name. And what we want to do is we want to say articles, for all our articles, we want to table find them all, and then for each articles as article, what we want to do is we want to assign, so we want to say article published equals, and we can just use this, so true or false, and give us one element from the array to assign that. Now if we're in a table that has updated and modified fields, we don't necessarily want to change the modified timestamp on every single record. So we could do this, we can say var app model, and we're looking for entity, article entity, and we just say that our article is that, which will then give us on a set dirty. And if we did have a modified field, we would set that like that, so that it would basically save the old timestamp again, it wouldn't update it. So now we can say table save and resave the entity, and if we just run that in cake migrations status, we can see that we can now just choose migrate. Now this is blown up, and I don't know why there's no active transaction, but I did a bit of research on GitHub, and this works. So get adapter, commit the transaction, and then go to the end of our loop, and then begin a transaction. So for some reason, I'm using SQLite. Let's roll back. Alright, what's happened there? Alright, so it's probably now saying it's already created. Alright, let's see. So it's still not happy. Duplicate column. So, and let's mark migrated, and the target is going to be this. Let's mark this migrated. And I don't know if that's done the right thing, but now we'll just roll it back, and it will, and then migrate forward again, and that will have done the. Okay, so now if we have a look in our tables, let's have a look at our view the table, view the data, and we should now see here a publish field with zeros and ones. So that's given us our ability. So we're going to do a count on published, count in and put that into the user table, and also a count on how many articles each user has as well. So that's our migration to add the publish field. Now let's create another migration, and let's make a migration that we'll just update two fields, add CounterCache fields, and in this case we're just going to use this table articles, and we're going to add a column. The column's going to be tag count for the articles table, and it's going to be an integer, and we can set the default to be 0 when it's created. And then finally, let's call update. Now copy all this and do the same thing for our users table. This time it's going to be an article count, and then we want to do a published count as well. So now we can migrate those across, and hopefully if we refresh might need to refresh our tables here. Let's hopefully now that's now pulled it in. So now we have our count columns added to the database as we need it. Now let's start with our basic usage of CounterCache. Now here we see we've got a sort of mental exercise. So we add the CounterCache behavior to the table of the item that's being counted. So when we look at we want to add the CounterCache to our articles table to count the articles table article count for users. So that's a bit confusing, so let's just do it. So what we do, we copy this, and then we go to the table of the item that's being counted. So go to the articles table, and we're going to be counting. So we need to, with the remote tape, so we say we want to count our articles and then apply the article count to the users table. So hopefully that makes sense. Let's have a look at that in real life. So what we need to do is, firstly, is we need to show a article count for the users table. So now we've added our CounterCache behavior for article count. Let's go and add that. So we go to the users index view, and we might add the other fields to save time. So we're going to put an article count on the users table, and we're also going to put a published count on the users table. And then we need to grab our formatted number here, and what do we say? It was article count and published count. Now let's refresh, and we can see here. So at the moment we have 0 initialized at 0 because we haven't updated the CounterCache there. So let's go to our articles and just choose one of our articles here and change the owner of it to Penelope, and then have a look at our users count. So notice that when we changed it from one to the other, it updated both, and it's now done that. Now clearly that's an issue, And the issue here is that what we're seeing is that we don't necessarily, if we're going to just do this from, add this and then have an issue with, we needed to change something to get it to update. So maybe there's a good thing to do is to create a bulk update command to actually do this update. So let's do a little bit of SQL here. Let's go open up an SQL editor. So let's go update users set article count equals 0. So let's set everything back to 0 and execute that. And so we've got our article count there. Now let's create in cake bake a command update article count. That's good. Now we can do this a number of different ways. I've actually got some code here that I used before, so I'm just going to copy this and then we'll go through it and we'll just put this into a command. And now wisely you'd probably want to put these sorts of things in a service class and then reference it so you could use it anywhere, but just get rid of this code here. So what we're going to do, we're going to fetch all our users. So we're going to fetch all our users and we're going to find all our articles, right, so the related articles, and then we're going to loop through and count our articles. Now again, we set on the user table, if there was a modified field, we set that to dirty so it wouldn't update. Now let's see if this is actually going to work or whether I've created something. So updated article count. And no, why is that? Because we haven't assigned this correctly. So we need to say article count, and all I'm doing is getting all the articles. Obviously they'll be in an array, so I'm just saying tell me how many records there are for that user and then just apply that. There's probably better ways to do that, but let's now have a look at that. Okay, so now we've updated our article count and we don't have to make a change to get that to change. But obviously when we go into our articles and we find one that was owned by Wendy and we change it, we can now see that the values have changed. Let me try that once more so that I can know that it's true. So I think it was, and then we have a look and we can see that, yeah, it's definitely changed. So it's keeping a track of article count for that user. Let's now look at our more advanced usage. Here we've got advanced usage in our documentation. We've got two ways of doing it. We can do it with a finder, but we haven't got any finders, so we're just going to add this in as a condition. So we're going to do a published count using a condition. So going back to articles here, we've got our article count being brought in. That's just the basic usage. Now let's do our published count, and the conditions are that we want to count in this articles table. So we go articles published, and it's true. So for each user, we want to count articles published equals true. Now let's have a look at that again in here. So we can say, let's go into the articles and move Randolph to Wendy, and it will again update those two things. But of course, again, you'd have to do globally updating that. So maybe we can do that. Let's have a look at a different way of updating this using a different type of query. So we're going to create bake, but this time we're going to update published count, and let's have a look at our documentation under the query builder here, and here it is returning the total count of records. So this is what I find I have to do a lot. I don't really fully understand the query builder. I get myself into difficulties, but I find that you just scan the documentation, find the closest thing to what you think it should be, and then use it. So this is what I'm going to use, this code here, and to get a count of all these things. So we're going to go into this one, and this is going to be different. Now the commands, CakePHP commands, have already got access to their model aware already. So we're going to say, I'm going to grab a reference to the articles table. Now I'm going to copy this code that I grabbed from, let's call that articles. And I'm not sure if I'm doing this around the right way. I think I'm actually doing this around the wrong way. So let's go users table, and we're going to grab the users, and we want matching articles. So we want users ID, and then we want to count the articles ID where, now we need a where clause here. Now this is where I think I'm going to really struggle, but let's conditions where published equals true. Now maybe we need to wrap that in okay, we seem to have an issue. What are we doing wrong here? Matching. We need a callable. So what we need to do here, so we want to add this, and then we want to create a callable. Let's do that. And return query where published equals true. and hopefully, let's dump and die that. Dump and die the query to array, and let's see if we've gotten anywhere close to what we want. And we need to update the published count, and where articles.published no. So matching articles where the articles.published equals true. Query. So what's our error message? This is an issue, and I don't know why this is, but look at this. So we're going to call this, we're going to give this an alias. So article count equals that. Right, let's try that and see if it works. Alright, so now we have a bunch of, let's just have a look at one of those. It's an array, so we can probably just spit it out. So what we're going to do now, we're going to loop through this user, grab the user and update the article count for that user. Now, that's interesting because it seems to be selecting the wrong thing. Let's have a look at it now. Let's see if it's correct. Right, that looks more like it. So for user ID 1, they have an article count of 38. So now that we've got that, let's go and assign to, let's rename that first, F2 to users table. And now we say users equals query to array, and then we go for each users as user, and we want to actually we need to get that'll do. Let's just go users as user to update. So we go like this, and we go table, users table, get, and we're going to get the user ID. So that gets hold of our entity, and then we want to go users table, user to update, user to update, and then we want to update, in this case we're doing published count for the user equals user dot article count. Now we might change that to make that a bit more obvious, where we'll change this to publish article count. Okay, so that looks really obvious. And then finally, we want to set dirty Now if this was in a table with modified timestamps, if it had timestamp behavior attached, you'd want to do this and not give it a string but give it a boolean there. And then finally users table call save and save the entity. Alright, so that's another way of using CakePHP's query methods. Now let's see if this works or if it blows up horribly. So what we're updating, we're updating the published count. Let's have a look at currently what that is. Okay, so there's a 0 there, so let's see if it does work. And now reload. And you can see that that's, if obviously there was all zeros, it would have updated them all. So that's another way of updating, bulk updating your published count. Now, we've covered the CounterCache behaviors, we've covered the basic usage and advanced usage using a condition. Now we'd like to have a look at our third option here, the belongs to many usage. So that means that we're going to apply a count to a table and then count something 2 tables away basically. So it basically says you need to add through and cascade callbacks to the belongs to many relationship. So in this case, we need to go across to our tags table. And this is the belongs to many relationship. So this is what we're counting. So we need to add this to the tags table. And we obviously need to get the name of the join table here. So it's article tags, and that's the alias, so the class name there, articles tags relationship there. So through cascade callbacks. Now what else does it say we need to do? We need to go into the comments articles table, or sorry, the join table, and add this. So the join table will need this. So let's go into our articles tags table and add, now this, remember we're adding tag count. Now have we done enough to get this working? Have we done enough? Let's go and see. So we'll go into our, now we're doing a tag count here, so let's go into our articles index and add tag count. So here we go. So we go like this, tag count, and then we, after title, we need to add an tag count. Alright, let's just refresh that so we can see it's all 0 to start with. Now, have we done enough? Let's change a tag on this article and just, right, we have. So can you see that that's now working? Let's now completely remove all tags off this and we'll go back to 0. Now we're going to work on the situation where we have to do a bulk update of this many-to-many table to make sure that these counts are all going to be correct. So let's now bake another command, and we're going to do update tag count command. And once again, we go into our query builder here and we can see that we've got here, so we've got, let's see how this works. Not sure, it's probably going to blow up on me, but I'll get lost sometimes with this sort of stuff, but we'll give it a go. So what we're going to do, we need to get our articles table, this, and fetch table articles, and then we want to say, okay, we've got this, find all the articles and select the ID, and let's call this tag count. We're going to count the tags from this remote and just and matching and then I think maybe that's it. Let's see if that returns anything sensible. Dump and die query to array, and what we're looking for, tag count, and okay, so article with ID tag has 63. So it sounds like I've got this around the wrong way. So we need to group it. I probably shouldn't have changed that. So we're getting each. Get this correct again. And now we're looking more like it. Let's see what that first one looks like. So we can have a look, and we've got ID of 2, so article 2, tag count is 2. And yep, let's see if that makes sense. Okay, so that's good. Now we need to loop through the articles and return ourselves our articles. Now we could do, without doing it to an array, we can just forget about that, because as soon as you iterate a query, it executes it. So let's go as, and it'll be an article. And so what we're going to do, we're going to say article to update equals articles table, get the article and get the key, so article ID. Then again, just let's copy some of this sort of stuff through here again. So we'll just modify it and close the others. And I should have done, and it's tag count, isn't it? Tag count, and it's article, and we need tag count is the one we want, that property. And then we want, oops, let's go back up. Finally, we go articles table here, oops, articles table and article to update, and we change this to give us our bulk update. So now we've got that. Let's see if it works. And it hasn't done a darn thing because I've probably not set this correctly. So let's try that. And now let's see if it's correct, which it is. So we knew we removed all the tags off this article, and now we can see CounterCache is working like it should. And let's modify this. So that's counting a record from 2 tables over, or belongs to many record, and we can now see that we've achieved what we can see here with the CounterCache documentation of basic, advanced, and belongs to many usage. So I hope this has been helpful to someone.